Picture yourself in a world without hours, without minutes, where time flowed like a river, marked only by the rising and setting of the sun. Deep within secluded European monasteries, a group of innovative monks was about to change humanity forever, with an invention that would reshape civilization: the mechanical clock. Imagine starting your day not by checking your phone, but by listening for the distant toll of monastery bells. In the 13th century, this was how entire communities structured their lives. For these medieval monks, time wasn't just something to measure. It was a bridge between the earthly and the divine. But why would monks, of all people, need to measure time so precisely? The answer lies in their daily routine. Their lives revolved around 8 specific prayer times throughout the day, from the pre-dawn office of Matins to the evening prayers of Compline. Missing these prayers wasn't just inconvenient, it was considered a spiritual failing. The first mechanical clocks were massive machines, occupying entire rooms in monastery towers. They didn't have faces or hands as we know them today. Instead, they used a system of weights and gears to ring bells at specific intervals. These early timekeepers weren't very accurate by modern standards. They could be off by up to half an hour each day and needed constant adjustment. Here's something fascinating. These early clockmakers weren't just technicians. They were artists and astronomers too. Many clocks included intricate astronomical displays, showing the positions of the sun, moon, and known planets. The clock became a way to understand not just time, but humanity's place in the cosmos. The impact of mechanical clocks spread far beyond monastery walls. As towns grew, they began installing their own clock towers. Suddenly, merchants could schedule meetings, workers knew when to start and end their days, and communities began to synchronize their activities. Time was no longer just a natural phenomenon. It became a social construct that shaped human behavior. This new way of measuring time had profound effects on society. Workdays became more structured, markets operated on strict schedules, schools and universities organized their lectures by the hour. The mechanical clock didn't just measure time, it changed how humans thought about time itself. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect was how this invention affected human psychology. People began thinking about time as something that could be saved, spent, or wasted. The phrase "time is money" emerged from this new relationship with time. The mechanical clock didn't just measure hours, it created a new way of thinking that would shape the modern world. These medieval monks working in their quiet monasteries could never have imagined how their invention would transform human civilization. From the smartphone in your pocket to the precise timing needed for global internet communications, every modern timekeeper traces its ancestry back to those first mechanical clocks in medieval monastery towers. The next time you check your watch or glance at your phone's clock, remember those innovative monks who first tried to capture time in gears and wheels. Their quest to maintain precise prayer schedules led to one of humanity's most transformative inventions, a device that would forever change how we experience and think about time itself. Picture this. You're a monk in the 13th century, living in a stone monastery where the only sounds are your footsteps echoing through cold corridors and the distant murmur of prayers. Your entire day revolves around worship. But here's the problem. How do you know when it's time to pray? Before mechanical clocks existed, people lived by nature's rhythm. The sun rising meant morning prayers. The sun at its peak meant midday worship, and sunset brought evening devotions. It sounds romantic, doesn't it? But imagine trying to wake up for midnight prayers when clouds hide the stars, or missing dawn prayers because winter days start so late. The monks faced a real crisis. Their spiritual life depended on the canonical hours. 7 specific prayer times throughout the day and night. Matins at midnight, Lauds at dawn, prime in the early morning, and so on. These weren't suggestions. They were sacred obligations that connected earthly worship to divine order. But how do you wake up at exactly midnight when there's no alarm clock? Some monasteries used candles marked with lines. As the wax melted, it would reach each mark at roughly the right hour. Others relied on water clocks, where water dripped steadily from one container to another. Church bells helped, but someone still had to know when to ring them. The most dedicated monks would stay awake all night, watching the stars and judging time by their movement across the sky. Can you imagine the exhaustion? Some brothers would fall asleep during vigils, while others would panic and wake everyone too early, disrupting the entire monastery's rhythm. Winter made everything worse. With shorter days and longer nights, even experienced timekeepers would lose track. Too many prayers were missed. Too many brothers were stumbling through their duties half asleep. The spiritual discipline that held these communities together was crumbling because they couldn't master something we take for granted, knowing what time it is. That's when these brilliant monk engineers realized they needed something revolutionary. Not just a better candle or a more accurate sundial, but a completely new way to capture time itself. They needed a machine that could tick away the hours with unwavering precision, rain or shine, day or night. And that desperation, that spiritual need for perfect timing, sparked one of humanity's greatest inventions. Now here's where the story gets fascinating. These weren't just religious men spending their days in prayer. Some of these monks were brilliant engineers disguised in brown robes. Picture Brother Richard de Wallingford in 14th century England, hunched over his workbench in the dim candlelight, surrounded by gears, weights, and ropes that most people would mistake for torture devices. Richard wasn't your typical monk. While his brothers copied manuscripts and tended gardens, he was obsessing over something that had never been attempted before, building a machine that could think like God, measuring time with divine precision. He'd studied at Oxford before taking his vows, and his mathematical mind couldn't accept the chaos of unreliable timekeeping. Imagine the scene: Richard convincing his abbot to let him build this contraption in their church tower. "You want to put what up there?" the abbot probably asked, staring at Richard's sketches of wheels within wheels, weights hanging from ropes, and metal teeth that would bite into each other with mechanical rhythm. But Richard had a vision. He designed something called the horologium, a word that literally meant hour teller, and it was absolutely massive. We're talking about a machine that filled an entire room in the church tower, with weights as heavy as grown men hanging from thick ropes, slowly descending as gravity pulled them down. Here's the genius part. As these weights fell, they turned massive wooden wheels lined with metal teeth. These wheels connected to other wheels, each one carefully calculated to move at exactly the right speed. The whole contraption ticked and clicked and groaned, like a giant wooden heart beating in the tower above the monks' heads. And when the hour struck, the machine would release a hammer that rang the church bells, sending the sound echoing across the countryside. For the first time in human history, an entire community could know the exact hour without looking at the sun or guessing from shadows. But here's what will blow your mind. Some of these medieval clocks were more like computers than simple timepieces. Richard's clock didn't just tell time. It tracked the phases of the moon, showed which zodiac sign the sun was in, and even predicted eclipses. Imagine a machine the size of a small room, built with hand tools in the 1300s, that could tell you not just what time it was, but where every planet would be in the sky next Thursday. These monk engineers were essentially building the world's first programmable machines, using nothing but wood, iron, and rope. They had to understand astronomy, mathematics, metalworking, and mechanical engineering, all while maintaining their spiritual duties and living on bread and prayer. The most incredible part? They were doing this 600 years before anyone had even dreamed of electricity, working by candlelight in freezing stone towers, driven by nothing but the desperate need to serve God more perfectly through perfect timekeeping. As mechanical clocks spread beyond monastery walls, they sparked a quiet revolution that would transform medieval society forever. Imagine walking through a medieval town square in the 14th century and hearing, for the first time, the steady toll of a public clock tower. This wasn't just a new sound in the urban landscape. It was the heartbeat of a changing world. Town squares became the new centers of timekeeping. The public clock towers, often decorated with elaborate astronomical displays and automated figures, became symbols of civic pride and prosperity. But these weren't just architectural showpieces. They fundamentally changed how people lived their daily lives. Markets now had official opening and closing times. Workers knew exactly when to start and end their days. Schools could coordinate their lessons. Even the town guards used clock towers to enforce curfew. Time had become democratic. no longer the exclusive domain of church bells and monastery schedules. But this newfound precision brought unexpected tensions. Merchants loved the predictability of scheduled market hours. Craftsmen could better organize their workdays. However, some nobles and church officials saw their power slipping away. After all, whoever controlled time held significant power over people's lives. Here's a fascinating detail. Early public clocks only had hour hands. The concept of minutes hadn't caught on yet. People would say things like, "Meet me at the third quarter past the hour," rather than specific minute times. The idea of being fashionably late didn't exist because time was still measured in broader strokes. The clock towers also became meeting points and centers of gossip. "Meet me under the clock" became a common phrase in medieval towns. These towers weren't just timekeepers. They were the social media of their day, places where news spread and communities gathered. Not everyone welcomed this new precision. Some workers complained that employers now expected them to arrive at exact times, rather than around sunrise. Farmers still preferred to work by natural rhythms, rather than mechanical hours. The clash between clock time and natural time had begun, a tension we still feel today. One particularly interesting story comes from a French town, where the local clockkeeper was caught deliberately running the town clock slow during winter mornings, claiming he was doing workers a favor by giving them more sleep. When discovered, it caused such an uproar that the town council had to pass special laws about clock accuracy. The spread of public clocks also changed the way people thought about productivity. Time became something that could be measured, divided, and most importantly, sold. The medieval phrase, "time is money," emerged during this period, showing how deeply these mechanical timekeepers had affected society's values. As night fell in medieval towns, the clock towers took on another role. Their illuminated faces became beacons in the darkness, guiding people home before curfew. Some towns even had different bell tones for different times of day, creating a sort of temporal music that everyone could understand. This technological revolution wasn't just about keeping time. It was about changing how humans related to time itself. From the way we work to how we meet friends, from school schedules to factory shifts, the public clock's influence still echoes through our modern world. Did you know that the first public clocks only showed hours? Minutes weren't displayed. If you're enjoying learning about medieval technological revolutions, like and share this video and subscribe to the Medieval Archives for more amazing stories. Tell us in the comments, could you live without knowing the exact time? Deep in the shadows of history lie the forgotten masterpieces of medieval clockmaking. Like whispers from the past, tales of extraordinary timepieces tantalize historians and clock enthusiasts alike. Among these lost treasures, none captures the imagination quite like the legendary clock of Richard of Wallingford. Picture this. In the early 14th century, a brilliant monk named Richard created what might have been the most sophisticated clock of the medieval world. Working in St. Alban's Abbey, he designed a machine that didn't just tell time. It tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and stars with astonishing precision. Sadly, this mechanical marvel exists now only in ancient manuscripts and drawings. Richard's clock was a true astronomical computer. According to surviving descriptions, it could predict eclipses, track lunar phases, and even account for the subtle wobble in Earth's orbit. All this from a machine built 700 years ago. The level of mathematical and mechanical understanding required was extraordinary for its time. But why did so many of these incredible machines disappear? Wars played their part. Medieval clock towers made tempting targets during sieges. Fire claimed others, while some simply fell victim to changing tastes and modernization. Many were melted down for their metal during times of need. Their intricate gears and wheels turned into weapons or coins. Here's where the story takes an intriguing turn. Some historians believe certain monasteries deliberately kept their clockmaking secrets hidden. They maintained private workshops where monk engineers worked on advanced designs, carefully guarding their knowledge. These weren't just craftsmen. They were the medieval equivalent of high-tech researchers. Some tantalizing clues suggest that monastery libraries once held detailed technical drawings and manuscripts about clock design. But many of these documents vanished during the dissolution of monasteries or were deliberately destroyed to protect their secrets. Imagine finding such a manuscript today. It would be like discovering medieval blueprints for a computer. The mystery deepens with stories of secret rooms in monasteries where experimental timepieces were developed. One persistent tale tells of a clock that could track the movements of all known planets. Its designs hidden away when its creator feared it might be seen as too close to magic or heresy. While we can't confirm these stories, they hint at how advanced medieval technology might have been. Consider the case of a recently discovered manuscript fragment describing a clock that could supposedly predict tides. Scholars are still debating whether such a device actually existed, or if it was merely theoretical. But the mathematical principles described in the fragment show surprisingly advanced understanding. The loss of these medieval masterpieces represents more than just missing machines. It's the loss of an entire way of thinking about time and technology. Each destroyed clock took with it unique solutions to complex mechanical problems, solutions that modern engineers might have found valuable. Yet not all was lost. Some of these medieval innovations survived in unexpected ways. Clockmaking techniques passed down through generations of craftsmen influenced the development of other technologies. The precise gearing systems developed for these early clocks later helped drive the Industrial Revolution. Modern clockmakers and historians continue piecing together these lost secrets, studying surviving manuscripts and archaeological evidence. Each discovery reveals more about how these medieval innovators viewed their world and tried to measure its movements with extraordinary precision. The story of these lost clocks reminds us that innovation isn't just a modern phenomenon. In quiet monastery workshops and towering clock towers, medieval minds grappled with challenges that would impress even today's engineers. Their lost secrets still have much to teach us about human ingenuity and the timeless drive to understand our place in the cosmic dance of time and space. As we turn the final page of our journey through medieval timekeeping, let's pause for a moment. Much like those ancient clockmakers did when adjusting their masterpieces, the mechanical clock wasn't just an invention, it was a revolution that fundamentally changed how humans perceive and interact with their world. Think about your morning routine. Your alarm clock wakes you at precisely 7. You check your phone countless times throughout the day. Your microwave counts down the minutes. Your computer displays time in the corner. Your meetings start on the hour. This precisely measured life began in those quiet monastery workshops centuries ago. The medieval clock did something extraordinary. It transformed time from a flowing river into measurable moments. Before these machines, time was organic, marked by sunrise, sunset, and the changing seasons. The mechanical clock imposed order on nature's rhythm, creating a new way of thinking that would eventually lead to standardized work hours, train schedules, and ultimately our modern global civilization. But this gift of precision came with a cost. Those medieval monks who first divided days into equal hours couldn't have imagined a world where people would feel enslaved by the very tool meant to liberate them. Today, we often find ourselves racing against the clock, prisoners of schedules and deadlines, forgetting that time was once measured by the gentle toll of monastery bells. Consider this fascinating paradox. The same invention that helped medieval society become more organized and efficient now often makes us feel like we never have enough time. The monks who built the first clocks sought to create harmony between heaven and earth. Yet their invention eventually led to a world where time is money, and every second counts. Perhaps there's wisdom in looking back at those early days of timekeeping. The medieval clockmakers saw their creations as more than mere machines. They were attempts to understand the divine order of the universe. Each gear and wheel was crafted not just with technical skill, but with a sense of wonder at the mysteries of time itself. As we rush through our tightly scheduled lives, maybe we should occasionally remember those innovative monks. They would probably be amazed by our modern timepieces, but might also remind us that time isn't just something to be measured and managed. It's something to be contemplated and appreciated. The legacy of medieval clocks lives on not just in our watches and smartphones, but in the very way we think about time. Every time we say just a minute or running late, we're speaking the language of those ancient timekeepers who first dared to capture time in mechanical form. So the next time you check your watch or glance at your phone's clock, remember, you're not just seeing hours and minutes, You're witnessing the endpoint of a journey that began in medieval monasteries, where visionary monks first dreamed of measuring the unmeasurable and capturing time itself in wheels and gears. Their story reminds us that some of humanity's greatest innovations came not from a desire for profit or power, but from a quest to understand our place in the grand clockwork of the universe. Perhaps that's the most valuable lesson these medieval timekeepers left us, that true innovation begins with wonder. If you've enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Medieval Archives for more fascinating stories from the medieval world. Share it with friends who might appreciate knowing the extraordinary origins of something we all take for granted. Until our next historical adventure, remember, every tick and tock you hear echoes the ingenuity of those medieval innovators who first gave time its voice.